Welcome back to the Ultimate Mixdown. This is part 3 of the EDM music production mini-series. In this video, we're going to go over drum production. We'll start with talking about setting up the drum tracks, and we'll go into adding a sampler on our track, and then pulling in our media items, in this case our samples, into the sampler, and then drawing out the MIDI notes in our MIDI editor. So let's get right into it. So let's get the drums in here. Let's go in, type in drums. I'm going to put them all in the same track. You have the flexibility of adjusting velocities, lengths of notes, and everything like that all on one track. You could do it on separate tracks. That's up to you. If you're used to working with audio samples, you can also bring in audio samples on their own tracks. I'm going to use a sampler, and I can just have one MIDI file that plays those audio samples. For those folks that are used to using sequencers, Reaper actually comes with the Mega Baby sequencer. That's a great way to just build out patterns so you don't have to draw in the notes or anything like that. I'm not going to use a sequencer for this, but I'll use a sampler. I'll show you how to bring in the samples. Adding an insert, I'm going to use Sitala. It's a very basic sampler. It'll get the job done. And you can see here, it's got, I believe, 16 samples that you can swap in and out. And you can also change shape, tuning, volume, all of these parameters. We're going to keep it basic. We're just going to bring in the samples that we want to work with. One thing I am going to do is layer samples. So a lot of music production is layering sounds. Kick drums, for example, like you might sound like one kick drum, but people actually use like 2 or 3 different kick drums to build and craft their own sound. And then they might even throw on plugins or effects. They might take it into a sampler and manipulate the sample even further. Don't get too deep in sound creation as you're creating a song. Those are 2 separate processes. You want to keep them separate. Spend time playing around with sounds and samples and doing your thing. But when you're writing a song, it's a huge hindrance if you just focus on the sound design when you're really just trying to get that song written. Like I said before, with MIDI items especially, you can always swap out sounds as you need to. Same with samples in a sampler. We added the sampler on as an effect. We're using Sitala. There's some initial samples, but we want to use our own. Command M or Control M will bring up your Media Explorer, and then you just navigate to the folder that has your samples in it. Like I mentioned, I'll layer some of the sounds together. So you see 2 different claps. They're going to play at the same time, but they're building out essentially one clap that I want to use. And same with the hi-hats. Let's pull up the sampler. And if you're just trying out samples with your beat and you want to hear samples and how they sound, you can loop through a section of the song, click play, and as that's playing, you can just go up and down to hear the samples. And these are on repeat because I have the repeat here. If you just want one shot, one time, you just take the repeat off. Okay, and then also a useful feature is if you want something like the hi-hats, but you don't want them going crazy like you just heard them, then you can reduce the rate. One important thing I want to point out is you want to make sure that this is selected and turned on. Preserve pitch when changing rate. A lot of the times samples or grooves or whatever you're working with are at a different speed or different rate than what your song is. So when you pull those samples in, you want to make sure that the pitch is preserved. So now I'm just going to build out my sampler with the samples I want to use, not too many. I have to find a kick, so we'll add that last. I'm going to pull in the snare. I'm going to pull in a couple of hi-hats. These are both closed hi-hats, but I'm just going to replace the 2 hi-hats here. I'll bring in my cymbal. I'm just going to add the claps after. You don't have to follow the order that was given to you by the initial default samples, and I'll bring the ride at the end. So we have kick, snare, hi-hats. These are going to play at the same time. Cymbal, claps, those will play at the same time, and then the ride. And then I also need to add a kick because I want to change this out. You can just go through your samples wherever you store them. If they're on an external hard drive, you go to volumes, go to that hard drive, and then find your samples from there. I'm just going to pull in some kicks. I'll take a listen, and then if I like them, I'll pull one of them in. Okay, this one seems to work well. Pull that in. Okay, now we have all the samples. So now I want to build out the progression of the drums. We can put a MIDI item in here. And as we talked before, you select the area you want. And you can do Alt-Shift-M or Option-Shift-M on a PC. That creates the MIDI item. We'll close the Media Explorer. We don't need that. Double click here. And again, you can use a sequencer if that's what you're used to. I'm just going to draw them in. You can also use your MIDI device. I'm going to start with my kick. So I want a 4 to the floor kick. And what that means is basically I'm going to have a kick every beat on the downbeat. Zoom in. So I'm going to draw one here, 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 and here. And that's just for the first bar. So take a listen. And then you can select them, copy paste, and you can go as far as you need to with the copy paste on the kicks. All right, and I'll just do that for now. We'll copy the whole progression later because it's all going to be the same thing. I'm going to do snare on 2 and 4. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, for example. There's going to be on 2 and 4. And the same thing is going to be for the claps. So I built up basically a clap snare that plays all at the same time. And I have to adjust the velocities so I hear more of one than the other the way that I want to hear them. I'm okay with that for now. So I'll leave that. We can copy and bring those back in. Now we have this long cymbal, and I thought it sounded cool to just start off the beat with that cymbal and then have it play maybe every bar, every other bar. So I'm just going to draw that in, drag it out. So we have, and then right here again, actually. And this might be too frequently. Maybe you want something like this to be the beginning of like an 8-bar progression. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to bring this, I'm going to get rid of that. I like it every 4 bars. Now, what do we have? Hi-hats. So these two are playing together. And we also have a ride too. The hi-hats are going to play basically on the offbeat. So the kicks are on the downbeat. The hi-hats are on the offbeat. Okay, so I'm just going to bring those on the offbeat. Right, so you see kick, hi-hat, kick, hi-hat, kick, hi-hat, kick, hi-hat. And that's what we're looking for both of these hi-hats. So I'll copy these hi-hat notes and bring them up to the other hi-hat and then blend these two together. Make my own hi-hat sound. Okay, so we're going to put these on the offbeat. And we don't want them to be loud, so let's just highlight them and bring them down even more. All right, that's good. And then we'll copy, paste these on the offbeats moving forward. We got this ride left. I want this to kind of be on the downbeat as well, like the kick. So I'm going to just copy the kick. Bring that up. And yeah, that's good. Way too loud. So let's just drag those down. We'll select the ride. You can actually see what notes you're working with by clicking on the key on the piano here. So I click ride and it highlights all the ride notes. It's just a good way so that you know that you're selecting the correct notes. And I have them selected and I'm going to bring it back, way back, so it's not too loud or too harsh. And you can actually drag the velocity on the note itself. So if you hover near the top of the note, you'll see this. You can click and drag. It actually brings the velocity of the note down that way too. And this one I want to last maybe an entire bar. Okay, so now we have our drum progression. We're going to split here, delete this, make sure there's no extra at the beginning of the end, and duplicate.
Thanks again for joining the Ultimate Mixdown. If this video helped you out, hit the like button. If you want to see more videos like this or you want to see the rest of the videos in this series and be notified, hit the subscribe button. As always, if you have any questions at all, be sure to leave them in the comments below, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.